She was just a quiet young woman, married to New York's most feared CEO. For 3 years he ignored her as if she were invisible. But the day she appeared stunning at an event, everything changed. The millionaire looked at her as if he had never seen her before, and decided too late that he would fight for her. But when she discovered the real reason for their marriage, her heart almost couldn't take it. But what came next? No one was prepared to feel. If this story touched you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments. Where are you listening from? Your support makes all the difference to us. No one ever dreams of marrying a stranger to save a failing business. Yet that's exactly what Amelia Bennett did. At 22, with soft brown eyes and the quiet strength of someone who had carried too much too soon, Amelia stood in a designer wedding dress in front of New York's most powerful CEO, Liam Carter. A man who didn't smile, who didn't speak unless absolutely necessary, who signed their wedding certificate as if sealing a business deal, because that's all it was to him, a merger, not a marriage. Their wedding photos were published in tabloids, not for love but for legacy. 2 companies saved, 1 woman forgotten. For 3 long years, Amelia lived inside Liam's penthouse without ever truly being there. She had her own room, her own schedule, her own silence. She ate alone, slept alone, celebrated birthdays alone. Sometimes days passed without hearing his voice. Other times his cold eyes met hers in the hallway, and he offered a curt nod. Never affection, never warmth. He was polite, civil, distant like snow falling behind glass. And though her world was surrounded by luxury, private chefs, rooftop views, custom gowns, nothing felt alive. She wasn't a wife. She was a shadow in someone else's life. Amelia remembered once trying to break the ice. On their first Christmas together, she'd left a handwritten note on the kitchen counter, offering to cook dinner for 2. His assistant responded with a gift card to a Michelin-starred restaurant and a message that Mr. Carter would be flying to Tokyo that evening. From that day on, Amelia stopped trying, but what no one knew was that beneath Amelia's quiet nature lived a woman with fire in her bones. A woman who had given up her dreams to protect her family from ruin. Her father had once run a small but respected publishing house, a family legacy passed down through 3 generations, until bad investments and an economic downturn left them drowning in debt. Then Liam Carter appeared, not with love, but with a solution. Marry me, I'll save the company, but this will be a partnership, not a romance. And Amelia said yes, because desperation doesn't wear white, it signs contracts. As the years passed, the world forgot her name. At events, Liam arrived alone or with other women, purely for image. Amelia was invisible, a secret hidden behind closed doors. When reporters asked about his wife, he offered a stiff smile and said she preferred privacy. Privacy. A beautiful word to mask abandonment. But Amelia was not weak. She was simply waiting, observing, learning how a man like Liam Carter operated. Cold, calculated, deeply broken. What hurt the most wasn't his distance. It was knowing he'd never even tried to see her. Sometimes late at night, she stood by the balcony of her suite, the city sparkling beneath her bare feet, and whispered to herself, maybe one day I'll leave. But when I do, he'll finally notice. And yet, she stayed. For duty, for loyalty, for the last thread of hope that maybe, just maybe, there was still something human behind Liam Carter's steel-grey eyes. Then one morning, something shifted. It was subtle. The way he paused in the kitchen when she walked in. The way his gaze lingered a second too long on the book she was holding. The way, after 3 years of complete indifference, he spoke her name aloud. Amelia. Just one word, but it landed like thunder in her chest. She looked up, surprised. He stood there in his tailored suit, coffee in hand, perfectly composed, and yet something in his voice trembled, as if he was finally acknowledging her as more than a contract. I have a gala next weekend, he said, clearing his throat. Would you accompany me? Amelia blinked. For 3 years, they'd never been seen together in public, not once. Why? She asked, not bothering to hide the edge in her tone. He hesitated. It's expected. Expected, Of course. But even so, Amelia's heart beat differently that morning. Was this a shift, a crack in the cold armor, or just another calculated move? She didn't know. But one thing was certain. For the first time in 3 years, Liam Carter had asked for her presence. And that was a beginning. A small one, a fragile one, but a beginning nonetheless. What neither of them could imagine was how that single invitation would begin to unravel every wall they had built, revealing not just old wounds, but something neither of them had dared to believe in for years. Hope. And as the day of the gala approached, Amelia couldn't help but wonder, would he see her now? Or was she still just a silhouette in his world of power and control? The morning of the gala arrived with a kind of stillness that felt almost sacred. Outside the penthouse windows, Manhattan glistened under soft sunlight, traffic buzzing below like a distant hum. Inside, however, tension pulsed just beneath the surface. Amelia stood by her bedroom mirror, holding the invitation card in her hands as if it might burn her fingers. It wasn't just an event. It was a message, a disruption, a test. For 3 years, she had been Liam Carter's invisible wife. And now, suddenly, he wanted her by his side. He hadn't said why, hadn't explained the sudden interest or broken the wall of cold civility between them. All he'd offered was a quiet, "Be ready by 7." Not a question, a statement, just like always. But something in his eyes that morning had been different. Less steel, more hesitation. Still, she wasn't foolish. She knew how men like Liam operated. Everything had a purpose, a motive, so she treated it like she would any other obligation, with quiet grace and silent strength. She let her stylist know, picked a dress from deep in her wardrobe that had never seen the light of day, and kept her heart on lockdown. By 6:30, Amelia stood in the hallway waiting, and then she saw him. Liam stepped out of his study dressed in a black tuxedo that fit him like it had been made by the gods. His hair was perfectly in place, his cufflinks gleaming under the soft light. He looked powerful, impeccable, untouchable. But when his eyes met hers, something shifted. Amelia was radiant. She wore an emerald green gown that hugged her waist and flowed like liquid around her legs. Her shoulders were bare, her collarbone catching the light like moonlight on water. Her dark hair was gathered elegantly, but a few soft curls escaped, framing her face in a way that made her look more woman than ghost. And Liam actually stared. Not a glance, not a businesslike nod. A full, open gaze that seemed to disarm him completely. "You look," he began, his voice low, uncertain. "Beautiful." It was the first compliment he had given her in years. Maybe ever. Amelia didn't smile. She simply nodded, her eyes cool but alert. "Shall we?" The car ride was silent at first. Neither of them knew how to fill the space between them. The intimacy of silence felt heavier than any argument, but when they pulled up to the gala, a dazzling fundraiser hosted in a marble hall glittering with chandeliers and socialites, something changed. Because for the first time in 3 years, Liam Carter extended his hand to help her out of the car, and for the first time, Amelia took it. Their fingers touched, briefly, politely, but the electricity of that moment burned through both of them. A current neither expected. A memory neither would forget. As they walked inside, Amelia felt hundreds of eyes turn toward her. Whispers followed her like perfume. "Is that Liam Carter's wife? She's stunning. Did you know they were actually married?" In the crowd of perfectly curated people, Amelia stood like a secret unveiled. Graceful, poised, hauntingly beautiful. And at her side, Liam, usually the center of attention, now slightly off balance. As if he was seeing her for the first time, he introduced her, not just as my wife, but by name. "This is Amelia." He let the words linger. She noticed the subtle pressure of his hand on the small of her back. Possessive, protective, almost proud. And yet, Amelia knew this world, the games, the masks. So when a charming voice called out from across the room, "Liam, you've been hiding your wife from us," she turned before he could respond. Oliver Hayes. Tall, refined, with an easy smile and a warmth that made people lean in. He was a known investor, powerful but approachable, the opposite of Liam. "Amelia," he said, bowing slightly as he took her hand. "It's a pleasure. May I steal a moment of your time?" Liam didn't answer. He merely watched as Amelia let Oliver lead her a few feet away. And that's when the shift became real. For the first time in years, Liam Carter was watching his wife with something that resembled emotion, something fierce, something unsettling, jealousy. As Oliver made her laugh, as he complimented her earrings and asked about her interests, Amelia felt something new, power. Not the manipulative kind, but the quiet strength of being truly seen. She glanced at Liam. He stood still, face unreadable, jaw clenched. But his eyes, they burned. He was no longer in control, and Amelia knew it. As the night unfolded, their roles reversed. She was the light that drew attention, and Liam was the shadow that followed. She danced once, smiled often, and refused to fade. But when it was time to leave, he was the one to find her. And for the first time in 3 years, his voice carried something raw. "Let's go," he said, not a request. Amelia turned, calm and composed. "Is that an order, Mr. Carter?" He stared at her, the muscle in his jaw twitching. "No," he replied slowly. "It's a request." A pause. Then she nodded, and they walked out, side by side, but worlds apart. What neither of them realized yet was that this night had broken the seal. That from this moment on, nothing between them would ever be the same, because the man who once ignored her now couldn't look away, and the woman who once waited had finally been seen. But being seen was only the beginning. The ride home from the gala was silent, but this time the silence wasn't cold. It was charged, heavy with everything unsaid, everything newly awakened. Liam kept his eyes on the road, one hand on the steering wheel, the other clenched on his knee. Amelia sat beside him, her posture composed, gaze distant, but every heartbeat in her chest echoed louder than the city outside. He hadn't spoken since they'd left the venue, not a single word. And yet, she could feel it. The way his shoulders were tighter than usual, the way his eyes darted to her reflection in the rearview mirror when he thought she wouldn't notice. The way his hand had trembled slightly when he placed it on the small of her back before guiding her out. Something inside Liam Carter was shifting, slowly, painfully, but undeniably. When they arrived at the penthouse, he opened her door. Not the driver. Him. She blinked at the gesture, but he didn't explain. He simply waited, then followed her in silence into the elevator. Just the two of them in a golden box of silence and unresolved tension. She could feel his presence, could smell his cologne, fresh, dark, magnetic, but she didn't look at him. And neither of them said a word until the doors opened. As she stepped into the living room, the crystal lights overhead flickered softly, casting reflections on the glass walls. It was all so pristine, so lifeless. But tonight, it felt different. Maybe because for the first time in years, she felt different. Amelia turned to face him. "Why now?" she asked, her voice even but firm. He looked at her, startled. "Why invite me tonight?" she repeated. "You've ignored me for 3 years. What changed?" Liam stepped closer, but only slightly. There was hesitation in his eyes, unfamiliar territory. "I don't know," he said quietly. She tilted her head. "Try." A beat passed. Then he exhaled. "When I saw you come down those stairs, I realized I'd never really looked at you, not properly. And when everyone else did tonight, when Hayes did, it made me angry." Her brows rose. "Angry? Why?" "Because you're mine," he blurted, then blinked, ashamed. "I mean, legally. And yet, you were standing there like a stranger." Amelia crossed her arms. "That's exactly what I am to you." He didn't deny it. He couldn't. She continued, voice softer now. "I was invisible to you. For so long, Liam. And tonight, for the first time, someone saw me, really saw me." His eyes darkened. "Oliver saw you because you looked stunning," he said. "But He stopped himself, jaw tightening. "I never expected to feel anything." "That's the difference," she said, stepping closer now. You never expected to feel. I've spent 3 years feeling everything and burying it. He didn't move. His eyes dropped to the floor, and that moment, that silence, was louder than any scream. From that night on, something unspoken took root between them. In the following days, Liam seemed to orbit her more closely. Not in words, he still spoke like a man raised by contracts and schedules, but in presence. He appeared more often in the shared spaces of the penthouse, sat across from her during breakfast, even if he didn't eat, held the elevator door open, asked if she needed anything before he left for work. They were small things, insignificant on paper, but Amelia noticed them all. And perhaps more startling, Liam noticed her. He asked about her books, her paintings, her family. And when she spoke, he listened. One evening, as she stood by the window watching the sunset, he walked up behind her, quietly. "That color," he said, pointing at the sky. "It reminds me of your dress that night." She turned, surprised. "You remember the color?" He looked at her. "I remember everything." Her breath caught. Was this real, or just another game? But the answer came later that week, when Amelia received a box. Inside was a canvas. On it, a painting. The exact color of the sky from the gala night, blended with brushstrokes that mirrored the flow of her dress. There was no note, just silence. But that silence said more than any declaration. And so, the invisible wife began to reappear. At first in the way Liam's gaze softened when she walked into a room, then in how his fingers brushed hers when passing a cup of coffee, then in the way he lingered when she smiled, as if seeing sunlight after a decade of grey. But not everything was simple. One night, Amelia walked into the living room and found Liam sitting alone, tie loosened, eyes distant. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. He looked up. "Regret what?" "This marriage." A pause. Then softly, "Every day. And yet, not for the reasons you think." Her throat tightened. "Then why?" "Because I regret how blind I was," he whispered. "And I'm afraid it might be too late to fix what I broke." Amelia stepped closer. "It's not too late, Liam, but it won't be easy." Their eyes met, two storms trying to learn how to hold hands. He nodded, slow and unsure. "I'm willing to try." But in her heart, Amelia knew. Trying wasn't enough. It would take everything. And even then, there were no guarantees. Yet somehow in the uncertainty, something tender began to bloom. Something new, something real. But just as they began to step toward each other, a familiar shadow reappeared. Because the past has a way of testing even the most fragile beginnings. And Liam Carter was about to face a jealousy he didn't yet understand. It started with a single text message. Amelia was in the study, reviewing her sketches near the window when her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and felt her breath catch for a moment. "Oliver Hayes. Would love to see some of your artwork someday. Still thinking about that painting you described at the gala." The message was respectful, casual, but something about it stirred a warmth in Amelia's chest that she hadn't felt in years. Someone remembering something she said, wanting to know more about her, not the company tied to her name. She typed a polite reply and put the phone down. Yet, her fingers lingered. And across the room, Liam was watching. He hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but when he walked in and saw the name glowing on her phone, the sharp pang in his chest caught him by surprise. Hayes. Again. That same charming smile, that easy confidence. That way he made Amelia laugh. Something inside Liam cracked. "What did he want?" he asked, voice low. Amelia turned slowly, her tone steady. "He was being kind, asking about my painting." Liam took a step closer, arms crossed. "Why is he still messaging you?" She raised an eyebrow. "Because he's not afraid to talk to me." That landed like a slap. His jaw tightened. "We're married, Amelia." "Are we?" she shot back. "Because it sure didn't feel that way for the last 3 years." The silence between them burned. Then she added calmly, "And don't you dare try to control me now, not after you left me invisible for years." "I'm not trying to control you," he said, but even he didn't believe the words. "I just don't like the way he looks at you." "And how is that any of your business?" she asked, stepping closer. "You're the one who told me on our wedding night that this marriage was a transaction." "That was before," he muttered. "Before what, Liam?" she pressed. "Before you saw someone else appreciate what you've ignored." He said nothing, but the tension in his body spoke for him. Amelia exhaled, her voice softening. "You don't get to be jealous, Liam. Not unless you're willing to fight for me. Not unless you feel something real." And with that she turned and walked away, leaving him in a silence so heavy it almost crushed him. Later that evening, Liam sat alone in the dark, whiskey in hand. The city glittered beneath the glass walls, but his mind was elsewhere. Images of Amelia laughing with Oliver. Amelia walking into that gala radiant. Amelia standing by the window, sunlight catching her face like a painting. She wasn't just beautiful. She was becoming unreachable. Not because she was leaving, but because she was becoming stronger. He'd seen it in her eyes. She was no longer the girl who waited in silence. She had become a woman who knew her worth. And for the first time, Liam was terrified he might lose her. Not because of another man, but because of his own failures. The next morning, everything was different. He showed up for breakfast early, no suit. Just a grey t-shirt and jeans, hair still damp from the shower. Amelia blinked. "You're not going to work?" "Not today," he said, pouring her coffee without being asked. She watched him wary. "Why?" "Because I owe you more than silence. And I need you to understand. I'm not proud of the man I've been." He sat across from her, looked her straight in the eye. "I was cold, because I didn't know how to be anything else," he confessed. "I didn't ignore you because you weren't worth noticing. I ignored you because you scared me." Amelia frowned. "Scared you?" He nodded. "You were kind when I didn't deserve it. You stayed when I gave you every reason to leave. You never begged, never complained. That terrified me more than any merger or investor." There was a pause. Then she asked, almost in a whisper, "And now?" "Now," Liam said. "I see you, and I don't want to lose you." The words hung between them like a promise. Fragile, but real. But promises were not enough. Not yet. Because what Amelia needed wasn't just words. It was change. And Liam knew it. So he tried. He started texting her in the middle of the day. Small messages like "thinking of you" or "what are you painting today?" He began waiting up for her when she worked late in the art studio. He even asked her to teach him to sketch, something he clearly wasn't good at but did anyway. And slowly the fortress he had built around himself began to crack. One night, after dinner, he confessed something that shifted everything. "I never learned how to love," he said, voice low. "My father taught me to conquer. My mother taught me to survive, but no one ever taught me how to hold someone and not break them." Amelia looked at him, eyes soft. "You don't have to know everything, Liam. You just have to try and not give up halfway." His breath caught. "I won't." And for the first time, she believed him. But just as they began to bridge the silence between them, something unexpected happened. A moment, a touch, a spark too powerful to ignore. It was late. They were both standing in the hallway, only inches apart. She moved to walk past him, and he reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Their eyes met, and in that charged silence, 1,000 unspoken things passed between them. Liam leaned in just slightly. Amelia didn't move. His voice was barely a whisper. "Tell me to stop." She didn't. And when his lips met hers, it wasn't possession, it wasn't control, it was reverence, raw, trembling, honest. A kiss that didn't ask for anything but gave everything. And just like that, the walls fell. But what came next would redefine everything they thought they knew about each other. Because once a heart begins to open, there's no telling what will come pouring out. The kiss changed everything, not in the way romantic comedies promised. No fireworks or orchestras in the background, just quiet, stillness, a strange and delicate silence that settled over both of them like snow after a storm. Amelia stood frozen for a moment after it happened, not because she didn't want it, but because for the first time, Liam Carter had touched her without armor, no contract between them, no business motives, no calculated gain, and it terrified her. So when he leaned in again, slower this time, she gently placed her hand on his chest, not to push him away, but to pause. "I need to breathe," she whispered, her eyes on his. Liam didn't argue. He stepped back, hands raised slightly, his expression unreadable. But what neither of them expected was how much that moment would change the air between them. Suddenly, every glance carried weight, every silence had meaning, every accidental brush of fingertips felt like an unfinished sentence. That night, they didn't speak again, just drifted into separate rooms. But neither of them slept. Amelia lay in bed, heart racing, thoughts spinning. Was it real? Was it just a moment? Was it a mistake? She didn't know. All she knew was that something had broken open. And once broken, it couldn't be unbroken. Liam, meanwhile, sat alone in his study, staring at the dying embers in the fireplace. He ran a hand through his hair, cursing himself softly, not for kissing her, but for not doing it sooner. For wasting years pretending she didn't matter when, somewhere deep inside, he had always known she did. The next morning, tension hung in the air like fog. They passed each other in the hallway, exchanging quick, polite glances. He said, "Good morning," and she replied, "Morning," as if they hadn't shared the most intimate moment in their entire marriage just hours before. But by midday, neither of them could take it anymore. Amelia found him in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, coffee cup in hand. "We need to talk," she said, her voice quiet but firm. He nodded. "Yes, please." They sat across from each other at the marble island. No table between them this time. Just the raw space of honesty. Uncomfortable, necessary, overdue. "I don't want confusion," she began. "I've lived in confusion for 3 years. I need clarity." Liam met her gaze. "So do I." She inhaled deeply. "Why now, Liam? Why the change? Was it Oliver? Was it jealousy?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "No. He just woke me up. You were always there, but I never really saw you until someone else did. And that's on me." She tilted her head. "What did you see when you finally looked?" He smiled faintly. "Someone strong. Someone brave. Someone I don't deserve." Her throat tightened. "You don't have to say that. I'm not saying it to flatter you," he replied. "I'm saying it because it's the truth. You sacrificed everything for your family, for a father who handed you over like a business card. And He stopped. Shame crawled across his face. "I treated you like an obligation," he continued, voice low. "You were the woman who saved my company, and I never thanked you. I never even asked if you were okay." Silence. Then Amelia spoke, softer this time. "I wasn't." He looked up, eyes searching hers. "Tell me." So she did. She told him about the first night in the apartment, when she unpacked her suitcase in silence, wondering if he would knock on the door. He didn't. She told him about the times she heard him laughing in meetings, but never at home. The holidays spent pretending she wasn't lonely, the birthdays where he left for business trips, the moments she sat in front of a mirror, wondering if she'd somehow become invisible even to herself. And when she finished, her voice broke. "I stopped painting for a year," she said, "because I didn't feel like I existed. And if I didn't exist, what was the point of creating?" Liam closed his eyes, crushed under the weight of what he had never seen. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I can't take it back, but I can change what comes next, if you let me." She looked at him, vulnerable and raw. "Do you even know how to love, Liam?" The question landed like thunder. He blinked, lips parting slightly. "No," he said honestly. "But I want to learn." A pause. Then Amelia rose from her chair and walked around the island until she stood in front of him. She placed her hand gently on his chest. "Then start here," she said. "Start by being present. Not perfect, just real." He nodded, swallowing hard. "Okay." From that moment, the rules of their relationship began to shift. They started having dinner together, not out of obligation, but because they wanted to. They watched movies. She introduced him to old classics, and he surprised her by actually enjoying them. They had quiet mornings, walking in Central Park without bodyguards or board meetings. He even left his phone at home once, just to make her smile. But even with these tender moments, tension still lingered. One night, as they walked through the hallway toward their separate rooms, Liam paused outside hers. "I don't want to say good night like this," he said. She turned to him, heartbeat quickening. "Then don't," she whispered. He stepped closer, but this time there was no rush, no hunger, just slow, quiet closeness. Their foreheads touched, their fingers intertwined. And though they didn't kiss again that night, something more intimate passed between them, a shared silence that promised something real was growing. Still, Amelia kept part of her heart guarded, because healing isn't instant, and trust isn't given. It's rebuilt, brick by careful brick. But for the first time since the day they said, "I do," Amelia no longer felt alone in that home, and Liam no longer felt hollow. Yet neither of them knew that the deepest truths were still waiting to test them in ways neither was prepared for. It happened on a rainy Tuesday. The sky had been heavy all morning, the kind of grey that made even the city seem quieter. Liam had gone into the office early, and Amelia found herself alone in the penthouse, wandering through the silence. She wasn't painting, she wasn't reading, she was simply feeling the shift, feeling the weight of everything unspoken still lingering between them. Because even though things had changed, the soft smiles, the late-night conversations, the warmth beginning to fill once empty rooms, there were still pieces of the past that hadn't been touched. Pieces she'd buried so deep, even she had started to forget how much they hurt. Until the phone rang. It was her mother. A quick, breathless check-in. Polite. But when she mentioned the anniversary of her father's company's collapse, Amelia felt something in her chest crack. After they hung up, she sat in the middle of the living room floor, knees pulled to her chest, staring at nothing. The truth had to come out, not just for Liam, for her. So when he returned that evening, soaked from the storm and surprised to find her sitting there, barefoot in one of his old sweaters, he knew something was different. He dropped his briefcase. "Amelia?" She looked up slowly. "Can we talk?" He nodded instantly and joined her on the floor without a word. They sat side by side, the storm murmuring against the glass around them. And then she spoke. "Do you know why I said yes?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer. He waited. "I wasn't raised to believe in fairy tales," she said, "but I was raised to believe in family. And when my father told me the business was gone, that everything he'd built was crumbling, I knew what was coming next." Her voice trembled slightly. He was pacing in the living room that night, like a man about to make a deal with the devil. "And when he told me about your offer, I didn't speak. I just nodded." Liam's breath hitched. "You didn't even hesitate?" he asked, his voice rough. "I hesitated inside," she admitted. "I wanted to scream, I wanted to say no, but I looked at him. This man who had sacrificed everything for our family, who was drowning in shame, and I couldn't add to his pain. So I agreed." Silence stretched between them. "I became a bargaining chip," she continued. "A silent sacrifice to preserve a name, a legacy. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd survive it. But I didn't know that surviving you would be the hardest part." Liam turned to her slowly, his jaw tight. "You think I didn't know?" Her eyes narrowed. "Did you?" "I suspected," he confessed. "But I didn't ask. I didn't want to confront what that made me. I told myself we both got something out of it. You saved your family, I saved my company. But now, hearing it from you, it makes me sick." He ran a hand through his damp hair. "I married a woman who gave up her life for others, and I treated her like she didn't exist." Amelia's gaze softened. "You didn't know how to see me," she said gently, "and I didn't know how to ask to be seen." Their eyes locked, raw, honest, equal. "What would you have done," she asked, "if I'd refused? If I'd said no that night?" Liam looked at her, long and hard. "I would have still saved your family," he whispered, "but I never would have known you, and that would have been a greater loss." Tears welled up in her eyes. She hadn't expected that answer. "I wanted to hate you for so long," she said, voice shaking, "but I couldn't. Because every time I looked at you, I saw a man who was just as broken as I was. Only you wore your wounds in silence." He reached for her hand slowly. carefully, as if asking for permission. She let him take it, and when their fingers intertwined, something unspoken passed between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. "I don't want to pretend anymore," she said. "Neither do I. I want this marriage to be real," she added, "but I need you to know who I am, all of me." "Then show me," he replied. "Tell me everything." So she did. She told him about her childhood, the afternoons in her father's bookstore, the smell of paper and ink, the way stories made her feel seen. She told him about her dreams of art school, the letter of acceptance she never used because the engagement had already been arranged. She told him how every time he ignored her, she painted him, not his face, but the feeling of being invisible to someone who should have seen her first. Liam sat in silence, absorbing every word like a man starving for truth. And then he spoke. "I want to be worthy of you," he said. "I want to earn what I should have cherished from the beginning." Amelia leaned into him just slightly. "Then don't promise me flowers and dinners," she whispered. "Promise me you'll stay when I'm difficult, when I'm scared, when I pull away." "I will," he said. "Because now, I want to stay." The storm outside softened. The rain slowed. Inside, two people who had once lived as strangers finally began to meet. But neither of them knew that something far deeper was about to happen, something that would test the fragile bond they had just begun to rebuild. Because when two wounded hearts begin to open, the truth isn't the end, it's only the beginning. There are moments that shift the axis of two lives, moments not marked by grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but by the quiet breaking of barriers, when something sacred slips through the cracks of silence and finally blooms. For Liam and Amelia, that moment came on a night wrapped in stillness. It had been days since their long conversation, since secrets were laid bare and truths whispered across trembling lips. And in those days, something subtle had taken root, a softness, a closeness like gravity drawing them toward each other, inch by careful inch, but neither rushed it. Instead, they orbited gently, lingering glances in the hallway, the warmth of his hand brushing hers at breakfast, the sound of her laughter filling the spaces he once kept so sterile. Until that night. Amelia was in the studio, barefoot on the hardwood floor, surrounded by canvases and unfinished dreams. The scent of oil paint hung in the air like a memory. A slow jazz record played in the background, something old and haunting. She didn't hear him approach at first. Liam stood quietly at the doorway, watching her from the shadows. There was something different about her tonight, not just the way her robe slipped from one shoulder or how the light kissed her skin, but the peace in her face as she painted. She was in her element, herself, and he realized with a pang of both awe and regret that he'd never truly seen her like this, never allowed her to be fully Amelia. She looked up suddenly, startled, but when her eyes met his, she didn't flinch. She smiled softly. "I didn't hear you," she said. "I didn't want to interrupt," he replied. She turned the music down and set her brush aside. They stood there in the hush between words, 100 emotions rising and colliding, desire, fear, vulnerability, and something deeper neither of them dared to name. "I was painting us," she said, nodding toward the canvas behind her. He stepped forward. The painting was abstract, strokes of stormy blues and deep reds like tension and longing woven together. But there, in the center, two figures leaned toward each other in silhouette, incomplete, unfinished, but reaching. "It's beautiful," Liam said, his voice rough. She turned to face him fully now. Her robe shifted slightly, revealing the curve of her collarbone, and Liam swallowed hard, but he didn't move, not yet. "I've spent so long hiding behind silence," Amelia said, "pretending I was fine, that I didn't need you, that I didn't want this." Her voice trembled. "But I did. I do." Liam stepped closer. "I was afraid," he admitted. "Afraid I'd break you. Afraid I didn't deserve you. Afraid that if I opened my heart, I wouldn't know how to stop the bleeding." She lifted her hand to his face, gently tracing the edge of his jaw. "Then bleed," she whispered. "I'm not asking you to be perfect, just real." His eyes searched hers, and in them he saw everything. The pain, the hope, the fierce tenderness that had waited 3 long years to be acknowledged. And without another word, he kissed her. Not like the first time, not tentative or hesitant, but fully, deeply. It was a kiss that unmade them both. Their hearts collided, their breaths tangled, and the world around them fell away. When they broke apart, both trembling, both undone, Liam rested his forehead against hers. "Are you sure?" he whispered. "I've never been more sure of anything," she replied. He lifted her gently, and she wrapped her arms around his neck as he carried her down the hallway. No urgency, no rush, just reverence. That night he didn't make love to the woman he'd married in silence. He worshipped the woman he had finally learned to see. Every touch was careful, every kiss full of meaning, every moment whispered, "You are wanted, you are safe, you are mine," not by contract but by choice. Amelia responded with equal tenderness. She touched his scars with grace, kissed his hesitation, and let go of the fear that had lived in her chest for far too long. They undressed slowly, as if shedding the years of distance between them. And when they finally came together, it wasn't just physical, it was healing, intimate, raw. They didn't speak, they didn't need to, because their bodies spoke in a language older than pain, a language of redemption, of surrender, of two souls meeting in the space between heartbreak and hope. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets, breathless and bare, the moonlight tracing their skin. Liam pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "I've wasted so much time," he whispered. "You're here now," she replied, fingers resting over his heart. And in that quiet, she felt it, his heartbeat finally slowing to match hers. They drifted to sleep wrapped in something new, something unspoken but deeply felt. But even in that peace, Amelia knew, one night couldn't erase 3 years of wounds. Love needed more than warmth. It needed time, trust, truth. Still, for the first time, she didn't feel alone in her healing. And as she drifted off, wrapped in his arms, she thought, maybe this wasn't the end of their story. Maybe this was just the beginning. The morning after changed everything. And nothing. Sunlight streamed through the penthouse windows, casting a soft glow on the floor where Liam and Amelia had shared their first true night as husband and wife. She stirred slowly, still wrapped in his arms, the rhythm of his breath steady against her shoulder. For a long moment she didn't move. There was warmth, comfort, even peace, but just beneath it, a quiet uncertainty pulsed. Because one night, no matter how beautiful, couldn't erase 3 years of absence. Love, if it was real, had to be proven in the ordinary, in the consistency, in the quiet choices no one applauded. She rose gently, careful not to wake him, and padded barefoot to the kitchen. She didn't expect anything. Not that day. But what she found was already different. There, on the counter, sat a single white peony in a small glass vase. Next to it, a folded note in Liam's handwriting. "You're the first thing I want to see each morning. I'm sorry it took me so long to realize it. L." Her fingers trembled slightly as she held the note. It wasn't grand. It wasn't dramatic. But it was honest, intentional. And that morning became the first in a string of unexpected gestures. Liam began changing his routine. Not for show, not for strategy, but for her. He started joining her for breakfast, not with his phone in hand or his laptop open, but fully present. He asked questions. He remembered the answers. "Did you finish that painting you started on Tuesday? How's the tea from that shop you liked? Want to walk in the park later?" Amelia observed him with cautious curiosity. Every part of her wanted to believe, but she had learned to survive on her own. Letting someone in, even someone she was technically married to, meant risking it all again. Still, day after day, Liam showed up. He brought her flowers, not the kind assistants ordered in bulk, but small, thoughtful ones. One morning it was sunflowers, another day, tiny wildflowers from a local market. "I don't know what they're called," he admitted once, "but they reminded me of the way you smile when you paint." He started scheduling meetings later in the morning, just so they could eat together. And in the evenings, he asked to see her work. She'd hesitated at first. Letting Liam into her art felt more intimate than letting him into her bed. But he waited, never pressured. And one evening, she led him into the studio and showed him the canvas she'd once painted in secret, the one of a woman with no face, standing in a room full of closed doors. Liam stared at it for a long time, then whispered, "I was every one of those doors, wasn't I?" She nodded silently. He didn't apologize again. Instead, he walked to the far end of the room and picked up a blank canvas. "Teach me," he said. She blinked. "You want to paint? I want to understand how you see the world." So she handed him a brush, and for the next hour they painted side by side. His lines were clumsy, his strokes uneven, but he didn't care, and neither did she, because for the first time he wasn't trying to impress her, he was simply trying to be with her. The transformation wasn't instant. Liam still had rough edges, he still struggled to express emotion, he still hesitated before reaching for her hand in public. But the difference now was effort, real, visible, and daily. He surprised her with coffee on cold mornings, always the exact way she liked it. Oat milk, cinnamon, 2 sugars. He remembered her favorite composer and played it in the car without saying a word. He left little notes inside her sketchbook. "I'm proud of you. Thank you for seeing me when I didn't deserve it. I'm learning because of you." And slowly, Amelia began to soften. She started reaching back when he reached for her. She began joining him at night, not out of habit, but because she wanted to. She let herself laugh again, fully in his presence. And one evening, while they were walking through Central Park, he slipped his hand into hers and asked, "Will you come with me to Chicago next week?" She hesitated. "What's in Chicago?" He smiled. "A meeting I'd rather skip. A hotel room with an empty canvas, and maybe a weekend just for us." She raised an eyebrow. "Are you asking for a business trip or a date?" He grinned. "I'm asking you to run away with your husband for 2 days. Her laughter was soft, genuine. "I'll think about it." But Liam wasn't just learning how to date his wife. He was learning how to earn her trust. And trust for Amelia wasn't built in flowers or notes. It was built in consistency, in knowing he would show up when no one was watching. Still, a shadow lingered behind his eyes. He was hiding something. Not a secret, but a weight, a hesitation. And she sensed it growing, slowly, even as things between them grew lighter. Because love, for all its beauty, doesn't erase the past. It simply invites you to face it together. And deep inside, Liam knew. There was one truth he hadn't told her yet. One truth that could cost him everything. But before that truth could surface, Amelia would find something on her own. Something that would shatter the calm they had worked so hard to build. And everything would change again. Trust is delicate. It takes years to build and only seconds to break. And Amelia never imagined that the next crack in her heart would come just when she was beginning to love for real. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. She was in Liam's office at the Penthouse, a place she rarely entered, but he had invited her in days earlier to show her a painting he'd hung near his desk. One of hers. That small gesture had felt sacred. So when she returned to the room alone while tidying, she wasn't snooping. She was simply curious about the man she was finally beginning to know, the man she was finally beginning to forgive. But as she reached for a sketch pad she thought was hers, her fingers grazed a thick folder with no label. She almost left it there. Almost. But something tugged at her. She opened it. And in seconds, her breath vanished. Inside were documents, pristine, neatly clipped, bearing the letterheads of Carter Holdings and Bennett Enterprises. A full corporate merger, dated weeks before their wedding. Her name was everywhere. Every page outlined the future of 2 empires becoming one, through her marriage, through her womb, through a strategic unification of family assets. There were clauses about heirs, clauses about image, clauses about her, cold, calculated, cruel, like she was never a person, just a tool. And right there, next to her father's signature, was Liam's. Tears blurred her vision. She dropped the folder. Her hands shook as rage and heartbreak surged in her chest, like fire and ice clashing in a storm. He knew. He always knew. It hadn't been a surprise, it hadn't been regret, it had been strategy. Everything, even their marriage, had been a calculated move to grow the Carter Empire. Even now, with all his flowers and kisses and soft apologies, was any of it real? She didn't wait. She grabbed her phone, keys, and a scarf, then left the penthouse without a single word. Liam wasn't home yet. She couldn't face him. Not now. Not with this burning in her chest like betrayal's final blade. She didn't know where she was going. She just walked, for hours, until the sun fell and the city lights blinked awake like stars trying to comfort her. She ended up in an old boutique hotel, one she used to pass on walks before she was married. She checked in with cash. No bags, no ID, just pain. Back at the penthouse, Liam arrived around 9. He noticed the silence immediately. No music, no scent of paint, no light coming from the studio. "Amelia," he called out. No answer. He walked into the office and stopped cold. The merger folder lay open on the floor. For a moment he couldn't breathe. Then his eyes scanned the room. Her phone was gone. Her scarf was missing from the hook. She knew everything, and he had no one to blame but himself. Liam sank into his chair, fists clenched, chest heaving. He hadn't hidden the contract out of malice. It had simply remained, buried, forgotten, a relic of the man he used to be. But now it was too late to explain that. Amelia didn't know he had tried to renegotiate the terms after their wedding. She didn't know he had refused to sign the second phase of the merger last year, quietly stalling the expansion plans. She didn't know he had stopped listening to his father, had started pulling money from the company to fund her gallery idea in secret. All she saw was what he once allowed. And maybe she was right to walk away. Because at the start, Liam had been that man. Cold, transactional, emotionally frozen. But now the thought of losing her broke him open in ways even he didn't understand. He tried calling, straight to voicemail. He tried messaging. No reply. He stayed up all night on the sofa, clutching her scarf, replaying every second of the past few weeks, every smile, every laugh, every time she had looked at him with the kind of trust he'd never earned. And now, it was gone. Stolen by a version of himself he no longer recognized, but one who still left shadows in her heart. Across the city, Amelia stared out the hotel window, curled in a blanket. She didn't cry. She couldn't. She was too numb, too hollow. But inside, her thoughts spiraled. Had he changed? Was any of it real? Or was she just another pawn in a game men played with empires and egos? She had been sold once by her father, and now sold again by the man who claimed to love her. Only this time, she had given herself willingly. That was the deepest betrayal. Not the contract, not the signatures, but the way she had let herself believe, let herself hope, let herself love. And now, she didn't know what to feel. But what she did know, without question, was that she couldn't go back. Not without answers, not without proof that he had truly changed, because loving someone wasn't the same as trusting them. And Liam Carter had shattered both. But what she didn't know, not yet, was that he would soon do the unthinkable. He would walk away from everything for her. Amelia didn't sleep. The hotel bed was soft, the sheets crisp, but peace wouldn't come. She lay awake with her back to the city skyline, replaying every moment of the last few weeks. The softness in Liam's eyes, the quiet mornings, the whispered apologies, the night they became one. Was it real? Or was she again just part of a plan? By morning, her heart was raw and her body still. She turned off her phone. She needed space, time, silence. Across the city, Liam was already moving, but not with panic, with conviction. He had made one mistake, leaving the past untouched, thinking love would be enough to erase it. Now he knew better. Love wasn't proven in gestures. It was proven in loss, in sacrifice. So he made the call. "Get my father on the line," he told his assistant. An hour later, Liam stood in the towering boardroom of Carter Holdings, facing the company's senior executives, attorneys, and, at the head of the table, Richard Carter, his father. "What's this about, Liam?" his father asked, annoyed. "You missed this morning's call with Shanghai. We're finalizing the expansion." Liam placed the merger contract on the table. "I'm dissolving the agreement with Bennett Enterprises." The room fell silent. "Excuse me?" Richard said, voice rising. "You heard me," Liam said. I'm walking away from the merger, effective immediately. The CFO blinked. That deal is worth over $15 million in projected gains this fiscal year. I don't care. Richard stood up. You don't care, Liam. You're throwing away a decade of strategic positioning. That marriage was a mistake, Liam cut in. Not because of her, because of me. He stepped forward, voice steady, eyes sharp. She's not a pawn. She's not leverage. She's my wife. And I won't let this company, Sanish, or you, define her as anything less. You're acting emotional, Richard growled. We made a deal. No, you made a deal. I just followed your lead, but I'm done following. Richard's jaw clenched. You'll ruin your reputation. I'll rebuild it, Liam said without hesitation, but I won't rebuild us unless I prove she matters more than any number on a page. He signed the termination order on the table, the sound of his pen echoing like thunder. The attorneys gasped. Richard slammed his palm down. You're throwing everything away for a woman? Liam met his father's glare, and for the first time, didn't flinch. No, he said quietly. I'm finally choosing something that's mine. Then he turned and walked out. No press release, no public statement, just silence. Back at the hotel, Amelia stared at the ceiling, unaware of the storm unraveling behind her name. She hadn't spoken to Liam since she left, hadn't told anyone where she was. She needed clarity, and clarity didn't come through confrontation. It came through watching what people did when no one was watching them. That evening, a knock came at her door. She froze. It wasn't Liam. It was her father. He looked older, smaller, guilty. Dad? She asked, shocked. He nodded, his eyes damp. I needed to see you before you heard it from anyone else. She let him in, her heart thudding. Liam came to me today, he said. He's different. Amelia frowned. What do you mean? He returned the shares, gave up the Carter Bennett agreement. No strings, no conditions. Said he wanted you to be free, not tied to any obligation. He gave it all back. Even the deed to the publishing house. She blinked, stunned. Why? Her father shrugged softly. He said, because you're not something to be owned. You're someone to be loved. Tears welled in her eyes. I don't know what happened between you two, her father added. But whatever it was, I think he finally sees you, Amelia. And I think he's willing to lose everything just to prove it. He left her with a sealed envelope. Inside, no letter. Just the original contract, torn in half. And a note in Liam's handwriting. I loved you too late, but I'll prove it's not too late to love you right. That night, she cried, not out of betrayal, out of belief. For the first time, the walls she had built weren't collapsing from force. They were melting from grace, because Liam hadn't just said he loved her. He had given up the very thing that once made him who he was, to become someone better, someone worthy. The next morning, Amelia packed her bag, took a deep breath and called the only number she'd avoided for days. He answered on the first ring. Liam. His voice was quiet. Amelia, I didn't expect... Can we meet? She asked. Silence. Then, anywhere, any time. They chose the old cafe where she used to go alone before she was married. It wasn't private, it wasn't grand, but it was honest. When he walked in, her heart stopped. He looked undone, vulnerable, not like the CEO the world knew. Like the man she had seen that night in the studio, the man who kissed her without agenda. They sat across from each other, the world moving around them, but inside, time stood still. She reached across the table, took his hand. I saw the contract, she said. His eyes lowered. I'm sorry. I know. A pause. Then she smiled softly. Thank you for proving I was never just part of a deal. He looked at her, broken and whole all at once. I'd give it all up again, just to see you smile like that. And for the first time since everything fell apart, Amelia leaned in and kissed him. Not because she had to, because she wanted to, because this wasn't about contracts anymore. This was about choice. And just when she thought her heart couldn't hold anything more, she felt something stir in her body, something unexpected, something life-changing. But she wouldn't know what it meant, until days later, when a test would confirm the impossible. The world had finally settled. After weeks of chaos, heartbreak, confessions, and choices that cost more than money could measure, Amelia felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not the peace that comes from everything being perfect, but the kind that grows when two people stop hiding and begin healing together. Liam had stepped back. He didn't push, didn't beg. After their meeting at the cafe, he let her lead. He sent her one message a day. Always brief, always tender. I saw a book today that reminded me of you. I miss hearing your footsteps in the hall. I'm here, no matter how long it takes. And every time she read them, Amelia smiled, because they didn't ask for anything. They simply waited. A week passed, then another. She stayed at the hotel, not because she couldn't return, but because she needed space to listen to her own heart, to breathe without expectations, to look at herself in the mirror and recognize the woman she was becoming. But then something changed. At first it was subtle. She felt exhausted in the mornings, even after a full night's rest. Certain smells made her stomach twist. Her emotions felt oddly intense, not just sadness or joy, but waves of something deeper, harder to name. She blamed stress, residual pain, the weight of transformation. But one afternoon, as she passed a pharmacy on the corner of Lexington, something pulled her inside. 10 minutes later, she was standing in a bathroom stool with a white plastic test in her hand, waiting, heart racing, lips trembling. She didn't breathe until the little window filled in. 2 pink lines. Amelia froze. Her hands shook as she stared at the result. Pregnant. The word echoed in her mind over and over, louder than the traffic outside, louder than her own thoughts. Pregnant. Her knees weakened, and she sat down on the closed lid of the toilet, both hands clutching the test. It wasn't planned. It wasn't expected. But it was real, and it was his. For a long time, she couldn't move. Her emotions came like a storm: joy, terror, awe, confusion, love, disbelief, because this wasn't just a baby. This was the child of the man who once broke her heart, and then rebuilt it piece by piece. She thought of that night, of the way he held her like she was sacred, of the reverence in his eyes. The words whispered against her skin, "I see you now, and now, this." A new life, growing quietly inside her, waiting to be known. She left the pharmacy with the test wrapped in a paper bag, her hands tucked into her coat pockets like she was protecting a secret. Back in her hotel room, she sat by the window and watched the city breathe beneath her. Could she do this? Could they? By evening, her decision was clear. She dialed Liam's number. He answered instantly. "Amelia, can we meet?" His voice was cautious. "Of course." "Where?" "Your place," she said. Silence, then. "I'll be waiting." When she arrived at the penthouse that night, it felt like stepping into a memory she hadn't visited in years. The walls looked the same. The scent of cedar and vanilla still hung in the air. But something was different. She was different. Liam met her at the door, not in a suit, but in a soft grey sweater, barefoot, hair slightly tousled. Human. Open. He looked at her like he didn't dare to blink. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hi." They stood there for a moment. Then Amelia reached into her bag and handed him the test. He took it slowly. At first his face was unreadable. Then he looked up, eyes wide, mouth parting. "Is this—" She nodded. "I took 3 more. All said the same thing." Liam's hand trembled. Then his knees buckled slightly, and he sat down on the nearest chair, stunned. He looked at the test again, as if it might vanish. Then at her. Then back to the test. And suddenly, his eyes filled with tears. He covered his mouth with one hand, trying to breathe. Amelia stepped forward, unsure. "Are you okay?" He looked up, voice cracking. "You're pregnant?" She nodded again. "I am." He stood up slowly and crossed the room. Then, in a single, breathless motion, he pulled her into his arms, not tightly, not desperately, just fully. He buried his face into her neck, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then he whispered, "Thank you." She blinked. "For what?" For trusting me with something this sacred, after everything I've done." Her eyes filled with tears. "I didn't plan this." He pulled back, cupping her face in both hands. "Maybe not. But this, us, maybe it was never supposed to be a plan." They stood there, forehead to forehead, breath to breath. Liam placed his hand gently on her stomach, and for the first time in his life, he wasn't thinking of legacy or business or names on paper. He was thinking of family, of second chances, of redemption. "Will you stay?" he asked softly. Amelia searched his eyes. "I'm not ready to forget," she said, "but I'm ready to begin." He nodded, his voice thick. "Then we'll begin, together." And for the first time since their wedding day, they didn't feel like strangers trapped in a story written by others. They felt like two souls, finally writing their own. But the final chapter wasn't written yet, because a wedding brought them together once. But love, real love, would bring them back to the altar again. 6 months later, the world looked nothing like it once had. Gone were the cold silences, the sterile rooms, and the empty echoes of a marriage built on strategy. In their place bloomed warmth, laughter, morning coffee shared in pajamas, and soft touches that didn't ask for anything in return. Amelia Bennett Carter stood in front of a full-length mirror, adjusting the delicate lace sleeve of her wedding dress. But this wasn't a gown chosen by a stylist or approved by a PR team. This one was hers, hand-picked, hand-altered, and worn with intention. Her bump was small but visible, gently pushing against the satin fabric. A symbol of everything that had been rebuilt, not just her body creating life, but her heart, once hollowed by disappointment, now full again. "Are you ready?" Lily, her closest friend, whispered from the doorway. Amelia smiled, tears shimmering. "I think, for the first time, I am." Downstairs, the ceremony space was quiet, intimate. No press, no shareholders, just people who mattered. Soft white flowers framed the aisle. String lights hung overhead like stars that had come down to listen. And at the end of the aisle stood Liam, no longer the cold, distant man in a tailored suit, but the man who had fought to become someone worthy of love. He wore a simple tux, no tie. His hands were folded in front of him, but he couldn't stay still. Every few seconds, his eyes scanned the path ahead, as if terrified she wouldn't come. But she did. And when Amelia appeared, his breath caught. There was no dramatic music, no gasps, only a silence so full it rang louder than any orchestra. She walked slowly, every step steady, her eyes locked on his, and Liam couldn't look away, because in that moment he didn't see the girl he married out of duty. He saw the woman who had transformed his life, the woman who taught him that vulnerability wasn't weakness, that love wasn't a transaction, that healing didn't come from control, it came from surrender. As she reached him, he whispered, "You're radiant." She smiled. "You're late." He laughed softly, eyes damp. This time there were no lawyers, no contracts, just vows, spoken with trembling voices and steady hands. "I promise to see you," Liam said, "even when you're quiet, even when you're strong, even when you're afraid." "I promise to love you," Amelia replied, "not for who you were, but for who you chose to become." And when they kissed, it wasn't a ceremony, it was a homecoming. Afterward, in a quiet corner of the garden, Liam crouched beside her and gently placed a hand on her growing belly. "Do you think he can hear me?" he asked. She chuckled. "I think she can." He looked up, startled. "She? Maybe," Amelia teased. "But either way, I hope they get your heart." He took her hand. "Then I hope they get your courage." Later that night, in the quiet of their shared home, now truly theirs, they sat side by side in the nursery, painting clouds on the ceiling. Amelia barefoot, her hair in a loose braid, Liam in jeans, speckled with paint. "You think we're ready for this?" she asked. "No," he said honestly, "but I know we'll figure it out. One day at a time." She leaned her head on his shoulder. Because that was the truth of real love. Not perfect, not painless, but present, consistent, alive. Their marriage had begun as a transaction, a merger of two legacies, but it had become something sacred, a partnership built not on papers, but on choices. And when their child, James Bennett Carter, was born 3 months later, Liam cried the moment he held him. Because in that tiny heartbeat he heard every apology he had ever whispered, and every vow he would spend the rest of his life living out. No longer the man who built empires for power, but the man who built a home for love. He had her as his wife on paper for 3 years, but only when he almost lost her did he learn the value of a touch, a glance, a stay. She, who was given out of duty, chose to stay for love. And together, they discovered that true love doesn't come from what's perfect. It comes from what's rebuilt day by day, with choice, surrender, and forgiveness. If this story touched you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let us know. Where are you listening from? Your support inspires us to continue bringing stories that touch the heart.